Hi, all, and welcome back to A World of Bookish Adventures. My name is Shannon, and Amanda is not with us tonight. She is out gallivanting and exploring the world. Definitely miss her, but we are so excited to share with you today's podcast because today I get the privilege of introducing you to indie author Lorna House. I have the privilege of being an ARC reader for Lorna's new series, The Throne Games, and the first book of that series, The Throne of Serpents and Roses. And I am so excited to have Lorna on our podcast. And a little bit about Lorna. Lorna House is a published author of the Forging Destiny series and the Throne Games, which we're going to talk about today. And Lorna is a small-time artist with a wide variety of medias, and she likes to spend her time exploring nature and cities or just staying at home with her many pets. So welcome, Lorna. We're so thrilled to have you on the show.
Hi, thank you. So glad to be here.
So before we get started on your incredible book series, I know I have to ask for Amanda, because if Amanda were here right now, the first question she would want to know is about your pets, because Amanda is definitely a pet lover. So many pets, what does that mean?
So I actually have a total of 5 pets. I have 2 large breed dogs, and then I have 3 cats, 2 of which are large breed cats. They're Maine Coons.
So when you mean large breed cats, like what are we talking about? Like, are we talking about like big fluff balls or real like strong muscular cats?
So they're Maine Coons. The male weighs 20 pounds, and the female she was like 17 and a half pounds last time we weighed her. Normally, cats weigh about 7 to 8 pounds. So, like, they're skinny and fluffy, but they're also just like, I guess, long. They remind me a lot of ferrets with how their bodies are stretched out to be just massive cats.
So we have to, as our listeners know by now, we also have a YouTube channel. Lorna, you got to promise to send us pictures of your animals, especially your cats, so we can share them with our listeners. Can you do that?
For sure. They're absolutely gorgeous. So I would love to share those pictures with y'all.
I love it. I love it. And just to get to know you a little bit more, you did share that you are an artist that uses a lot of different medias. So can you give us an example of some of the things you like to create?
Yeah, so I make necklaces, like stone wire necklaces. I paint. I really love to paint my house and make murals. I just moved into a new house, so I get to start making murals in all of these rooms. I do 3D printing, I do resin work. I'm probably leaving out like half of the medias, but those ones are my favorite.
And I have to tell you, when you were telling us about your murals that you do at your house, I had this vision of Feyre at the House of Wind. Like, are you painting eyes and wings all over your house?
So the first one and the only one that I've done so far is painting a toothless. He was the first one that went in my room, and I'm gonna do Disney characters in my office.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So maybe we can add along with your really large cats, maybe you could share a picture of Toothless so we can share that with everybody.
For sure. I can also share with y'all some pictures that I left in my mother's house because I asked her if I could turn my bathroom, if I could paint the walls, and she didn't know what I meant when I said it. So now my bathroom at my mother's house is like a big underwater ocean theme.
I love that. Oh, yes. Can you get those pictures too? Because I definitely want to see what those look like.
Of course, I sure will.
All right, perfect. And if you're listening to us on Spotify right now, make sure you hop over to YouTube and see these amazing works of art. And as incredible as these are, I cannot wait to share with all of our listeners your new book series, The Throne Games, because as I shared at the opening, I was privileged to connect with Lorna on TikTok, and that is where I applied to be an ARC reader. She accepted. I got to read her first book and absolutely fell in love with it. And I will share before we get into the details that I read her book coming out of my fourth wing read by Rebecca Yaros. I was in a little bit of a slump because I loved that book so much. And it was like, you know what you do after you read a book and you fall in love with the characters. And it's like, now what am I going to do with my life? And that's kind of when I met Lorna and started reading her book. And I will tell you, I have not connected with characters since that fourth wing series. I had the same feelings, the same emotions that I had during that book. So I am so excited to share her story with you guys, because you definitely want to check out this book.
Thanks. Yeah, I definitely try to keep my characters where you will love even the villains.
I can see that and I can agree with that. So why don't we maybe start back at the beginning a little bit? At what point did you decide, hey, I want to be an author? This is the journey I want to take.
Fun fact about that is that I feel like I don't remember deciding it. But when I was looking through things like old memorabilia from like my kindergarten days that my mother still has, I found a paper that it was just a basic question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And on that paper, I had wrote that first I want to be a princess, because what little girl doesn't want to be a princess? And then it was immediately followed by a storyteller.
Wow, that's amazing. So this has really been a part of you since you were young.
Yeah, I love the storytelling process and making my own worlds. And I feel like even growing up as a kid and like playing with my siblings and everything, we were definitely creating worlds, fighting dragons in our imaginations. That little piece of me just, it kind of remained, it just stayed.
Now you get to create these amazing worlds for all of your readers, everyone that loves your book. So, you know, now no longer just your siblings, but everybody that reads your book, you get to create these worlds for.
Yeah, and it's so exciting being able to share them and like bring people into the worlds, into the characters, bringing all of it to life in such a permanent way that like 60 years from now, we're going to know where my imagination was.
One of the things I love about your book is your magic systems and your world building and your character development is so on point. You really seem to have really honed that part of your skill set as you're going through your story. And I know you've shared this, and I kind of when I did my reviews for you, kind of Alice in Wonderland meets the Hunger Games meets the Fae world. And it's kind of a nice blend of those story topics. So, was that your plan when you started the Throne Games? Did you kind of have that in mind, or did it kind of just evolve as you started writing?
I wish that I could take credit for planning all of it, but I'm not a planner at all. So when it came to this, I knew it was going to be an Alice in Wonderland, but I don't like how stories are very exact of the retelling. So I wanted it to have a huge twist. And my characters kind of develop themselves. They do what they want. I just write the story. So when it came to that, like the Hunger Games vibe, I didn't even realize that was there until I had written it and people pointed it out. And I'm like, hey, it's a good book. We're rolling with it. But basically just wrote itself.
Well, I think, and I definitely want to talk to you about the characters, but I think till before we get too far down that path, why don't you take a minute and tell our listeners about the new release? Tell us about the Throne of Serpents and Roses.
Okay, so this new release is an Alice in Wonderland retelling with a huge twist. As I was saying, it's very different. Um, we start in a human world where our main character, Anira, is being sold into marriage. Her wedding is crashed when the rift opens and her sister is taken, and Anira is forced to act quickly by crossing the rift to protect and rescue her sister. But she doesn't expect the Fey world that she finds on the other side.
It's such a great world. It's such a great world. For our listeners to know, we are not going to do spoilers. If we start going down that road, either we'll stop it or we'll warn you. But as of this point, do not worry about spoilers. But I love the way you created your character. And I want to find out your favorite character. But before I do, I want to share my favorite character with you is I really love your female protagonist. I love the strength you've given her. You know, sometimes when we read these fantasy stories and Fey world and kind of, magic systems, I feel like a lot of times our female protagonist starts off weak or helpless or they need saving. And I feel like your character you created right from the beginning as strong. And it doesn't mean she doesn't go through her arcs and she doesn't go through her trauma and everything like that she goes through, but I feel like she's always coming from a position of strength. Was that intentional on your part, or was it kind of like you said she just sort of shared her story and you wrote it down?
Anira is very much just her own character. I find in all of my books that I write, there's a little piece of me in all of them. So, starting with her, she was very much like a caretaker, wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty, did, work around the house, that sort of stuff, which led into her being strong enough to face the challenges that she'll have later. But when I started it and I was writing it, I was just like, this sounds like a thing she would do. And she just became her own character.
I love that. I love that. So, is there any particular character in your story that is your favorite?
I feel like my answer is constantly changing because they're all my babies and I love all of them. Two of my favorites are the twins. In Alice in Wonderland, they would be Tweedledee and Tweedledum. They're twins and they're chaotic and they definitely get their hands dirty in a different sort of way that is a magical power of sorts, we'll say. But it's very much just things that they do, they make me giggle.
I definitely feel like in some ways they're the comic relief of the book, and then in other ways they're very scary. Like I think they go back and forth between those emotions.
Oh, they're absolutely terrifying and I love them. I They are the comic relief. They do have a lot of funny parts that makes it normal for them to be so terrifying. So I totally agree with that.
And one of the other things, and I want to circle back around again to your female protagonist because again, I love when books are written with really strong female characters. It's like, yes, I love it. But one of the things I really love that you did in that is you didn't make her competent over the things she must master on this quest that she's on overnight. I feel like sometimes some authors in their books have this unrealistic time frame of they're learning all the things and or this magic just magically appears overnight and all of a sudden they can do all the things, and I felt like you purposefully gave her immense learning curves that she struggles through in order to get where she needs to go. And even in the first series, I don't think she ever really gets where she needs to go. We don't get that end point of her learning and her development and her growth of where she's going. So again, was that kind of a purposeful of making this a realistic journey? I guess if you can say that for a fantasy book, but a realistic learning curve of if this were really happening, what would probably happen.
I have actually heard that one of everybody's favorite thing is that it is so realistic to how characters might be. Anera is very much the nope, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do it. But she gets drug into it and she cares enough to rescue her sister to go do the thing. So even by the end, she's like, I really don't want to be here, but I'm doing it, which I think a lot of us in the real world face that same experience, that mental experience where it's like, I don't want to do it, but here I am.
Exactly, exactly. So, again, no spoilers, but book one, The Throne of Serpents and Roses, does end on a cliffhanger. And I will let you know, Lorna, I have a bittersweet feeling to you because you broke me. The ending of the book, I'm crying, I'm yelling at the book. Don't do it. And I'm not going to tell you what it is because you got to read the book, but I'm yelling, don't do it. No, are you crazy? What are you doing? I was so mentally and emotionally affected by the way you ended the first book that you traumatized me. So thank you. I appreciate when an author can do that to me.
Of course, that's what I live for. It's definitely worth reading, even with that ending. And it picks up. I've actually started writing the second book. It picks up in a way that it makes sense. Can't give too many spoilers because that's even on the next book. But we get to see more of Anira just kind of just winging it like she does in the end of the book. She's just winging it.
I think I think that's probably what got me through was knowing there's a book two. There's a book two, and what's happening now is something good is going to come from this. And I am a sucker for a happy ending and everybody lives happily ever after. And so I know we're not there yet. No, we got some books to go, but I'm hopeful book two will get us a little bit closer. So, have you thought about that? Have you thought about how many books are going to be in the Throne Game series?
So the current plan for all of my series are for them to be trilogies that connect. So even at the end of her trilogy, you might see her in other stories, but I'm hoping I can
Oh,
bring her out a trilogy.
oh, I like that. So interesting. Will your Forge and Destiny series kind of come into this as well, or is this kind of a new path you're taking?
The Forging Destiny series does connect to it, and if you read both series, you can see magical aspects that are brought in both stories, even through like year one to the Throne of Serpents and Roses, with both of them just being the first book, you can already see it.
Oh, I love that. So you're almost creating your own multiverse per se. I know sometimes we talk about it with Marvel. I know they're through the Sarah J. Maas series, there's some multiverse crossovers. So it kind of sounds like we're maybe getting the same thing from you.
It is a multiverse, and it's all connected by the rifts and the portals.
I love that. I love when books start connecting because then you go back and you look, well, are there Easter eggs there, are there hints there, is now that I've read this book, now this makes sense in this book. And so I find that utterly fascinating and utterly difficult. How do you keep track of all of your magic systems and all of your world building and all of your characters? How are you keeping track of that as you're doing what you're doing?
It all lives in my head. And that sounds like a really terrible answer, but it all lives in my head. It's kind of like if you meet a friend, you remember certain things about them. So it's just stored away in a separate file in my brain.
Well, then I am even more impressed that you're able to keep all of these, it's like a juggler, all of these different worlds. And I am so thrilled for more books and to see how these worlds start crossing over because what you've already created is amazing. So I'm really, really excited to learn that.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely love foreshadowing as well. So as you're reading the books, if you think it's foreshadowing at all, even in the slightest, it might be because I love it. Um, but there are things that you'll get to the end and then you'll reread it and be like, oh, I didn't see that.
And I'm a tabber. I'm one of those that love after I've read a book or I've read a series, I like to go back and tab like foreshadowing or tab like character descriptions or land descriptions or magic system descriptions to kind of keep that in my mind. So it sounds like to me, from the Forging Destiny series to now the Throne games, I got a lot of tabbing to do.
Yeah, I am not a tabber, but I looked at one of my books that a friend did tab, and there was so much in that book that she had tabbed. So it's definitely a journey.
So, you shared with us, Lorna, your system or maybe lack thereof system of keeping kind of all of your characters and magic systems and world building in place. And you have the file cabinets in your head. But can you share with our listeners a little bit about your writing process, especially now that we know the series that you're coming up with are going to cross and have kind of a multiverse? How does that writing process look for you?
So, as I said, I am not a planner at all. I let all of it write itself, and I just, have to remember how the magical world is set up, the magic systems, the laws, that sort of thing, and they stick in my brain, and then I just go and I run with it. So I just sit down and write, which is kind of a crappy answer, I know, but like I actually started writing, I think October before last, so October 2021. And my goal was just to sit down and write 200 words and write. I was writing on lunch breaks while I worked at a factory. So it was all on my phone, and I did not have like a notebook beside me to keep it all in stores. So I just had to remember it. So since 2021, I've published the 3 books. I have 2 more that are coming pretty soon. But yeah, my writing process is just to wing it, and somehow it turns out pretty good.
It turns out amazing. And we will definitely share with our listeners all the information where they could find the Forging Destiny series and where they can find the Throne Game series. Because now that we know they're going to be interconnected, even though we're talking about the Throne Games, we got to send them back to the beginning. They got to do the Forging Destiny series, roll that right into the Throne Games. Can you give us any idea or a little sneak peek into when you think book 2 of the Throne Game series is going to be released?
I know it's going to be 2024. I actually, do you want a surprise that I'll release here first of
Oh
something
my
that's in the works?
gosh. Yes, I would love that. Okay, I'm ready. I'm sitting down. I'm ready for the surprise.
So, after writing A Throne of Serpents and Roses, I saw how that book did very well, and it was a lot better than the Forging Destiny books. So I'm deciding to pull year 1 and year 2 back, and they are getting a full rewrite. And year 1, year 2, and year 3 will all be published in 2024, with the first 2 being complete rewrites. And then it's going to be followed by the next book for the Throne Games.
So, okay, so to understand, because this is really, really cool. So the Throne of Serpents and Roses, amazing, amazing, amazing book. I cannot talk enough about this book. Is out. You're redoing the Forge of Destinies series, and then we're gonna get the second book and the Throne Game series. Is that what I understood?
Yes, it is. And if anybody wants my Forging Destiny year 1 and year 2, I do have copies of the before, like how it's already written, first edition copies. So I'll be selling those from my website, taking down getting paperbacks completely off of Amazon and all the other retailers. So those for the rest of this year and until they get republished can only be bought through my website, and then we're going to work off of that.
Well, why don't you, and again, if you're listening to us on YouTube, we're definitely going to put the information there as well as on our other social media platforms. But what is your website? Where can our listeners go to find those books?
So it's going to be www.the-whistling-dragon.myshopify.com.
Perfect. And we will, again, on our YouTube and our social media sites, we will have that typed out so our listeners can find you. So it sounds like they could get now the original Forging Destiny series. And then when you do the rewrite for next year, it's almost like they'll have an original copy of what you did, and then they can get the rewrite. Pretty cool, especially for our book lovers out there that love to get all the different copies. That's a really neat opportunity for them.
Right, that's what I was thinking, and that's why I'm taking them down. So it's literally going to be limited copies of that one. The Forging Destiny, I wasn't really marketing a lot, so I didn't have that many sales on it. So literally, when I say it's going to be like limited copies, if you get those, you're going to have one of like maybe 500.
Wow, that's really cool. That's a really cool. And I also let our listeners know, I did share at the beginning, for transparency purposes, that I was an ARC reviewer for Lorna, and I did get a free e-copy of her book, and in order to read and review. But I loved it so much, and I completely am passionate about supporting indie authors. I did purchase a book of hers as well. So I have purchased my own copy of The Throne of Serpents and Roses. And not only did I purchase a copy, and is it the same website, Lorna? I purchased a copy with sprayed edges. And I don't know about you guys, but chef's kiss to the books that come with sprayed edges. So if our listeners want to check out the sprayed edges, do you still have that available?
I do have that available, and I actually spray my own, so you're kind of getting like a piece of art from me as well as my book. So it's two different forms of art that was created by me.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's even makes it more special. So I have your book on the shelf next to my Fourth Wing copy because I got one of the originals with the sprayed edges. So on one of my bookshelves at home, any book that I have sprayed edges are going to go on that. So I just have this beautiful series of sprayed edges. And do you think you're going to do that continuing with like the second book, maybe the Forging Destiny series when you do the rewrite? Are you going to think maybe keep doing this idea of offering the sprayed edges?
I am. I mostly do the solid sprayed edges of the books that I've already published. I believe the one that you have was like one of 30 that were like my pre-releases. So for all of my pre-release, there will be special editions that will be sprayed. And then there are a couple special editions that will come out whenever I do actual book shows. And if you want to, keep up with what shows I'm going to be at, if you want one of those special copies, you can follow me on TikTok or on my Instagram. And I always post what shows I'm going to be going to and the sprayed edges that I'm bringing with me.
And as I shared with you guys, we will make sure you guys know her TikTok, her Instagram, her website. Do you have like an email list or something like that that people can sign up for so they could get updated information? Or is the social media the best way to get that information?
Currently, it's the social media that's the best. I am signing up with a PA starting at the beginning of next month. So she will be doing newsletters for me and we'll start doing newsletters.
Oh, that's fantastic. And hey, if you would promise, once you are up and running, make sure you share that newsletter link with us so we can make sure all of our listeners can cycle back around and sign up for your newsletter.
For sure, I sure will.
Lorna, I appreciate so much you taking time and being with us today. I love your book. I am so thrilled that we got to connect on TikTok and that you brought me on as an ARC reader. I hope I get to be an ARC reader for book 2. And guys, trust me, I'm not going to steer you wrong. Take a look at this book. Go check it out. Go on Goodreads. Go on any of these platforms. Look at her reviews. Look at the write ups on it. It's just a fabulous book. If you are into Fae, or if you are into world building, if you're into magic systems, if you like these crossover themes of Alice in Wonderland and Hunger Games, if you like strong female protagonists, if you like strong male protagonists that have a kind of a soft, caring side somewhere underneath those rough edges, all of those amazing moments that make fantasy books what we love, then the Throne Games is definitely one that needs to be on your bookshelf, needs to be on your TBR. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And can we get you maybe next year when you start re-releasing the Forging Destiny series? Can we have you back on so we could talk about that?
Oh, for sure. I love talking about my books, so I am down to join whenever you want to talk about my book. I like talking about books in general.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much, Lorna, for joining us today. As I shared, we will be sharing all of her contact information on our YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok accounts. And check her out, and you won't be disappointed. And our next podcast is going to be our Halloween special. So, what we have done with this is Amanda and I have each chosen a spooky bookish place, and we are going to be sharing those ideas and adventures with you. So, definitely make sure that you stay tuned and check us out for that. And as always, we thank you for being a part of our podcast. We look forward to connecting with you each week. We invite you to join us on our social media pages, as well as to like and subscribe to us on YouTube, as well as your favorite podcast platforms. And you can find all of that information in our link tree. And as always, don't forget to share your own bookish stories with us. You can either fill out the form in our link tree or email us your adventures directly at awobapodcast@gmail.com for a chance to have them shared. And until next time, read more books and then go explore. Bye, everybody.